after the serpent had tricked Eve into his plan instead of God's plan. God now shows up on the scene, and he has something to say. And the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. That last verse, Genesis 3:15, known as the Protevangelon. I said this is Bible prophecy made simple. Don't write that down, unless you want it to be Bible prophecy made complex. But here's the point. God's plan was paradise. Sin handed that paradise over to Satan. God now comes into the scene, and he says about this contest now, this warfare now, that the serpent is going to be crushed. But the serpent, on the other hand, will bruise the seed, that is, the descendants of the woman. A marvelous prophecy. Now, it's kind of simple, but it starts off something really incredible. What it's really saying is that though paradise has been lost, though Satan has a plan and will continue to try to operate his plan, and he will bruise many along the way, that ultimately somebody will descend from this woman, Eve in this case, who is going to crush the head, someone who is going to destroy all the works of Satan. Right there in Genesis chapter 3. So, God's paradise, violated by sin, God's got a plan to fix it. Do you think Satan would like that plan to fix it? Do you think he would do everything that he can along the way to thwart that plan? Folks, from Genesis chapter 1:1 all the way through to the end of the book of Revelation, we see the conflict, and Satan is trying to thwart what God had planned to make paradise like it was in the beginning. He's been trying to stop it, reverse it, hinder it, undo it in every way, shape, and form. Remember where the seed was to come from. It would be a descendant of this woman, would it not? So, the woman had 2 boys. Satan inspired one to become a murderer. Satan caused, through that murderer, the other to be murdered. That was nothing more, in the broad sense, of trying to destroy God's plan. You see, if he could destroy the seed of the woman, what would happen to God's promise? What would happen to this plan? It would be ended, would it not? That's really what was behind that whole thing with Cain and Abel. Now, as time went on, moving a little further down the line, we moved down the line to about 2400 BC, and there was a fellow that I can really relate to in a funny way. He was a real yachtsman. Short name, 4 letters. His name was Noah. That was about 2400 BC, once again, if we follow Bible chronology. Genesis chapter 6, we see the conditions that were there in the time of Noah. Now think about why were these conditions the way they were. And God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thought and hearts was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repented me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Satan's plan: corrupt the whole human race, make them all incapable of fulfilling the promise of a coming one who would crush his head. Wow, what success he had. We think that the world was very populated in the time of Noah. And it could have been very technologically advanced, by the way. We don't know exactly because, you know what, quite frankly, we don't have a lot of leftovers. Because you know why? It was all destroyed. We have a lot of evidence Every place on planet Earth is covered with layers. Layers and layers and layers, right? Layers and layers laid down mostly by water in silt depositing, right? Some lava and some other things, of course, but the world is filled with evidence that this really happened. But the other things that were there, we don't have, other than the fact that God preserved Noah and his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives. The whole human race, the promise of God, was really, really under attack. The whole human race corrupted. We even think that they might have been genetically corrupted. Satan really trying to stop the whole thing. By the way, he's always been interested in genetic manipulation. And we can see this all the way up into the Nazis and all the way up into some of the things being done with stem cells today. He's very interested in corrupting humankind any way that he can. We don't even know how it all works all the time. The world destroyed. Noah survives. 3 sons. Everybody in this room is a descendant of one of those 3 sons. Did you know that? Now, looking you over this morning, most of you are not descendants of Ham. Probably none of you, would be my guess. Most of you are probably not descendants of Shem, though some of you might be. Almost all of you are descendants of Japheth or Japheth. He is the one who largely, his descendants populated Europe and Asia. And looking around, that's where most of your relatives came from. We all come from that stock. You see, because they began to fill the earth again. Soon after the flood, they went forth. Well, shortly after Noah, something else began to happen. You don't really think Satan gave up, do you? God's plan, someone's going to crush his head. Satan's plan, no, you're not. And he will do everything he can to break that. In Genesis chapter 11, we're introduced to a character in a situation. The character, his name is Nimrod. He was an evil guy. Some people like to say he was like the first AntiChrist. He was a in-your-face God kind of a guy. Didn't trust, believe anything regarding God. He was an enemy. We read an interesting thing that happened as a result of what he started. It said, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven. And let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people are one, and they have all one language. And this they began to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. You say, well, gee, that's an interesting account. What's that all about? Well, we read further, it says, so the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore the name is called Babel, Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth. And from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. Now this was shortly after the time of Noah. Now what you see happening here is mankind sticking together. The command was to go forth. Go forth. The general idea was in the going forth, man would have in his fallen state a better chance of being open to the things of God. Man who comes together, as mankind does in cities, breeds a lot of corruption. Can you think of any righteous cities on planet Earth to this day? Can you think of any? No, but is that not where pornography and prostitution and all the worst of our culture and societies are always found in the cities?